It's Platt, and today we drink a Ukrainian classic. That's next to Platt's Beer of the Week. So the particular beer we have this week, I'm going to have to warn you guys, I'm going to butcher a lot of names in this video, is Lvivske 1715. Lvivske, Lvivske. Hopefully I'm saying that right. This was the first modern day brewery opened in Ukraine. The brewery itself is located in Lviv, Lviv, Ukraine, right along the border with Poland. The brewery itself dates all the way back to its finding in 1715 when a Polish count named Stanislaus Potocki, hopefully I said that right, granted local Jesuit monks the right to open a brewery. Like the rest of Europe at the time, it was the monks that really started the brewing tradition, had all the knowledge and capabilities to brew, so it just made some sense. The count had them open in Lviv, which at the time was considered a suburb of Krakow, Poland, even though it's technically in Ukraine. It was considered a suburb. The monks got the brewery up and running and quickly started gaining some traction, not just with the local consumers, but with European travelers. And within just a few short years, it was considered one of the top 2 or 3 breweries in the Austro-Hungarian Empire that was ruling most of Eastern Europe at the time. The brewery kind of chugged along for the first 150 years or so with no problem. And then in 1867, the monks sold the brewery to a group of businessmen. They converted this into the Lviv. It was the Lviv, Joint Stock Brewing Company. Sorry about that. And then started investing money into the brewery, started modernizing brewing, adding marketing, distribution, all that kind of fun stuff. And the brewery started to expand to a modern day brewery. 1918, at the end of the First World War, they were producing over 200,000 hectoliters a year. So this is a big, thriving brewery. Unfortunately for them, the good times did not stick around for long. After the Second World War, the Soviet Union started nationalizing breweries throughout the Soviet Empire, the conquered territories, what have you, and they fell under Soviet control. Pretty much stayed under the Soviet thumb, even though they were considered at the time one of the more popular beers in Russia. We'll get to that in a little bit. By the end of the 1990s, though, things had changed. The Soviet Union fell apart. By 1999, international investors had started coming in. They started reprivatizing these breweries, and that's what happened in 1999. They became part of the Baltic Beverage Holding Company. That kind of got them out from the Soviet umbrella. They stuck around with Baltic for about 10 years or so, and then 2008 is when Carlsberg came in. Big Beer finally came back in and purchased them. Carlsberg, one of the big international beer conglomerates. They came with their money and distribution and took over Lvivske in 2008. They were there with them in 2015 when the brewery celebrated its 300th anniversary, which is kind of a cool story. Plenty of parties and stuff. Did a limited edition beer, but 300 years, that's quite a long time. 3 years later, in 2018, Lvivske kind of came in the modern era by adding a non-alcoholic brew, something that just wasn't traditionally done, but stepped into modern times. And today they are an official sponsor of the Ukrainian national soccer team. Go team. Real quick, let's talk about some of their other beers. They've got a medium, I'm going to say smallish to medium-sized line of beers. First is their porter, 8% ABV. On the website, it says something interesting, and when I say website, I'm referring to the Lvivske Brewing website. There's also a separate Carlsberg website. We'll talk about that a little bit. But on the Lvivske website, they make the claim that it has malt and wine flavors. I'm not sure what that's about. I didn't read anything to where they're adding anything crazy in the brewing. I don't know if that's a local labeling law thing or what have you, but I found that quite interesting. Next is a blonde, 4.5% ABV. On their website, they list this as a flavored beer. They didn't say what flavor. You go to the Carlsberg website, they don't even have this listed as a product, so I'm not sure. A little conflict there, and I did notice that there is a difference between what the Lvivske Brewing site lists and what the Carlsberg site lists, so it may be just one of those things, kind of depending on what jurisdiction you're in, what you can find. Next beer is a Dunkel, 4.7% ABV. This particular beer won gold at the 2018 Eastern European Beer Awards for Best Dark Lager. Lvivske, besides brewing traditional pale lagers in a green bottle, they do several dark lagers too. That appears something that they take great pride in. Lastly is a beer called Robert Dom's, 4.3% ABV. This is a Pilsner. This appears to be a separate line. I don't know if this is a contract brew, what have you. For one thing, they have a person on the bottle that is supposedly Robert Dom's. I don't know who that is, but I'm going to say by that name, he's probably not a local. Just, you know, the way the name's spelled and everything, I'm going to say he's not a local. They talk about how they use a unique recipe, that they use a specific style of Belgian Pilsner malt, that, again, this just seems, marketing-wise, a little different than the rest of the Lvivske line. It may be something they're producing for Carlsberg, who knows. Well, before we try this particular beer, though, let's check out the stats. So while researching this beer, I came across a topic I'd never thought of before, but it makes, kind of makes some sense. When researching this, it said that Lvivske, when it was nationalized by the Russians, quickly became one of the more popular beer brands in the Russian Empire. And I got to think, I never really thought about what Russians drank beer-wise during the Soviet Empire. If you're a child of the 70s and 80s, you just thought Russians swigged gallons of Stoli all day, just screwdrivers unlimited. You never thought about beer, but now, now a little more mature set of eyes, you realize, some of the occupied territories, East Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Ukraine, they had rich brewing histories. They weren't necessarily going to give that up. So what they drank beer-wise in the Soviet Union. So I did a little research and went to pull out the glasses on this one. I thought I'd talk to you about a couple of brands that they had in the Soviet Union at the time. First is Stolichnaya, hopefully not to be confused with Stolichnaya, which is Stoli vodka, which again, is kind of default for the Soviet era. This particular beer came in between 7 to 8% ABV, kind of when you got it, when it was available kind of thing. It was a dark lager based off of Doppelbock. Apparently, it was the beer, if you somehow got to a place that had multiple beers, available, it was the one that was always going to be kind of on the higher end of the ABV scale. I'm not going to say it's their malt liquor, but it was just, if you, like I said, had a little bit of variety, like, oh, that one's got a little more, bounce to the ounce, a little more oomph. Next beer was Bidayev's Porter. Again, I'm probably butchering that. I apologize. A lot of people think porter, well, that's kind of funny. That's a British beer style. Why were they drinking that in Russia? Again, pre-Soviet period, there was a rich brewing tradition, and there is a beer style called Russian Imperial Stout. They were drinking darker beers in what we consider modern-day Soviet Union for years and years and years. Apparently, this brewery had been around a while, pre-Soviet times, and this beer kind of became a precursor to what we would think of today as the modern Baltic Porter. Lastly, and I'm going to totally butcher this one, was Zahegulskoy. It was their Budweiser, for lack of a better term. It was the most popular beer. Apparently the thing was made with Vienna malt, and that was the one malt that they could always consistently acquire in Russia at the time, and that you knew they were going to be able to make the beer, and the beer was going to be on the shelf. So it's probably the only brand that you were comfortable. Your once a week trip to the store, honey, I'm going out for a sixer. Back then you'd wait in lines for whatever. It was the one brand you kind of knew would be there. They had set up quite an extensive brewery network. Apparently at one time up to as many 700 different breweries throughout the Russian Empire brewed this beer, kind of like Anheuser-Busch here in the U.S. has all their regional breweries. And it was just the one beer that people knew you could find. apparently after the fall of the Soviet Union, there was some thoughts of taking this brand, international. They tried pushing it in Great Britain, never got any traction. But I'd never thought of it. Like I said, I just always thought they could just drink a ton of vodka, but it would make sense they'd have a beer too. So anyway, something interesting. If you know of any other Russian, beer brands, especially during the Soviet era, is when I'm really, fascinated by, please leave them down below, because again, this is something I just had never thought about. Well, enough about that. Let's drink a Ukrainian beer. All right, I can already tell you right now, I have not put my nose to it, but I can smell the Euro funk from here. The classic kind of green European funk. Plenty of bubbles though. We got, more than a finger of a nice white foamy head, so plenty of carbonation. Yeah, that funk's there, but it didn't pick up that much. I do get a little malt. I got more funk on the initial opening of the bottle than I do now. Let's give her a try. Yeah, that's European. that is European. The funk, though, is not. Maybe it's just one of those initial things when you open the beer, but the funk mellowed out. It's still there. This is still, in your vein of the Heineken, the Mythos, the, classic European green beer. But I will say in the taste, the funk's tamed down. It was more of a nose thing. Easy drinking enough. A little bit of maltiness, not a lot there. Like easy drinking. Lighter body, but not real light. This is, this is not technically a light beer, so it's going to be more in that Budweiser, Miller, High Life, body-ish, the Heineken range, not as light. The very effervescent, short finish to it. Overall, though, nice, easy drinker. This would be one of those things, again, if you couldn't find anything else, you're traveling in Europe and they have this, I'm not going back. Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe down below. Also, please like the video because it lets YouTube know we're putting out good content. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or beers that you'd like me to try, please leave them in the comment section, or you can always contact me on the Twitter page. Till next time, bottoms up.